All right, so we're live and we're recording. Time for some water. At least until some Coke Zero arrives. All right, how's everybody doing? We decided to do this kind of live stream Q&A thing because it is currently February 26th, 2020, and in 4 days, I will be, this Sunday, March 1st, I will be in New York City to have a sit-down discussion with Dinesh D'Souza, political pundit and Christian neocon, I don't know. One of the things I found really interesting, which I'll probably mention kind of to start the thing, is that in 1988, when he was working for Ronald Reagan, I was in the military and was a full-on Rush Limbaugh ditto head at the time. And so it's very likely that back then we would have agreed on things, and now we don't. And so my primary interest is how we got from there to here, and how one of us has changed and become far more liberal, and how one of us has gone way, way, way further right. And it's not like we're going to end up meeting around there, but it's good to talk about. So some quick notes. In the stream, if you do, if you do debate info, that will pop up so that if somebody comes in and is like, what's this about or whatever else, there's a link to where people can purchase tickets to actually be there live in New York City. There's also a link there to pang-burn.com/livestream, which is where you can go to order the live stream view of it. And so I'm trying to promote this so that maybe we can do more things, although I don't know that we're doing more things with Dinesh. I thought I'd start by talking a little bit about how I normally operate and what I'm doing to prep, because this thing today was actually kind of a surprise. Travis basically just said, hey, can you go live and do this? And I said, yeah, I'm not quite sure what we'll get out of it, but at least I'll have a chance to interact with people and find out what questions they want to ask or what questions they would like me to ask. So as we started kind of preparing for this, I don't do talks and lectures and debates the way a lot of other people do. I don't sit around and, first of all, generally when I'm doing a debate, I don't want to know any information about my opponent. I mean, I'm happy to know who they are and maybe see something they've done before, but I worry that if I know too much about the person, I'm going to walk in prepared to debate them as a topic instead of debating the topic as a topic. In this case, the person that I'm debating, who they are and what they think and what they've written, is very important, because essentially this isn't a debate. It's a sit-down discussion with two people with very different views about how the way, the world should work to be better and what kinds of things we should be doing. And so what he said in the past is important. But one thing that frustrates me is when I show up, like I did a debate last week with Tyler Vela, and if my debate opponent shows up with quotes from me, as like Cy did, that's one thing, because at least then I'm defending my own words. But my views may have changed, or there may be something missing from the context. And so I don't know why anybody would show up with a quote for any reason other than to say, once upon a time you said this. Do you still stand by that? It's worse when they show up with quotes from somebody else. Oh, this atheist said, or this philosopher said, or somebody else said, or, whatever, as if I'm there to defend all these other ideas. I want to actually have a discussion with the person sitting there in the current time frame. And some things that I don't plan to do at all is address the fact that he cheated on his wife and got fired from King's College because of that, or that he went to prison and was pardoned by Trump. Now, some people are going to immediately, thanks for the subscription, Malleus. Some people, here's your,
redacted.
Oh, I probably shouldn't do that because I'm recording this to also post on YouTube, but it's fine.
Redacted.
Some people are going to say, how on earth can you possibly sit down with this guy and not go at him for the fact that he's a felon related to, campaign finance stuff? Because I don't think it's particularly relevant to this. I actually don't think that what he did rises to a level where it's relevant to the conversation, or it seems like a cheap shot. Essentially, he got some people to donate money to a friend of his, and then he reimbursed them because the amount that he wanted to donate to their campaign was over the limit. I think the limit was like 5,000, and he wanted to donate like 30,000 or something. And so he gave some money to people to donate and then reimburse them. It's illegal. He acknowledged it, at his trial. I'm sorry I did it. His lawyer was saying that was basically a way to, help out a friend. Bad decision, but, he pled guilty and he got his time. Whether or not Trump ended up pardoning him is Trump's going to pardon all kinds of crap. So the addressing that in this discussion, I don't think is particularly relevant. So I want to actually get to, the subject of the discussion is supposed to be God, Trump, and the future of America. And so if that's where we're going, I thought it'd be a good time to have some people come in to chat, to ask me specific questions about my thoughts about the debate or how I'm preparing for it, maybe kind of hype things up just a little bit, and get questions from people who are here that they'd like to see asked. And I have a notepad open to be prepared to take notes. So Malleus Odom writes, there are two genuine questions I wanted to ask you. I'm a disabled combat veteran that can correlate with you on military service. Do you feel that your non-belief had any influence from your service? Two, I'm an agnostic atheist. I've heard your disagreements with this perspective from your past videos. Has your prospect on this position I hold evolved from that video? So I apologize, Malleus. I'm going to get to those another time because this is just about the debate with Dinesh D'Souza. So checking this out here. Braxton Hunter uploaded a video today entitled Why Matt Dillahunty Won't Believe in God, a debate review. I don't care, and it's not relevant to this. So what's the point of the debate? Should ask Dinesh what proof he has of God. Yeah, so on the God subject, what proof and reasons to believe are going to be there for sure. G'day, Mr. Matt. Were you discussing the Facebook post? The Facebook post, what are you? So I made a Facebook post and a Twitter post that said, hey, at 8 p.m. Central, I'm doing this live hangout. Here it is. This is the place for people to come to ask questions about the Dinesh D'Souza debate, to let me know what questions you'd like to have asked, etc. Yeah, a lot of people misread it, which is why there's about, 50 or 60 responses to that Facebook thread instead of them showing up here. I guess I should edit that. We live in a world where people barely read the headline. Would Christians running the country be fair to non-Christians or oppressive? So there's a number of problems with that question, Mikey, which is that Christians have been running our country. And for the longest time, they were clearly oppressive, but some of them can be fair. Some of them do understand church-state separation. So it's not like you could answer. The better question is, if like everybody who shared his ideology were elected to office versus everybody who shared my ideology were elected to office, which one would be more fair to the other side? And I would, you know, that's kind of straight up a reforming of that same question. Yeah, which is better that way. When asked by Dinesh, what's your proof of God not existing, what will you tell him? I don't have proof of God not existing. The burden of proof isn't on people who don't believe that there's a God. The burden of proof is on the people who are claiming that there is. How Christianity would be different if Jesus came to India. Not quite sure I understand that. But that seems like the sort of thing where I would anticipate his answer is that Jesus didn't need to come to India. After all, Dinesh was born and raised in India and found Jesus without Jesus coming to India. But I'm adding it. Question I'd love to ask Dinesh: why does Dinesh see no conflict when the Bible clearly states its position with homosexuality and other teachings in the Bible that Trump actively promotes counter to its teachings? I don't understand the question. I mean, that you're literally asking, why doesn't Dinesh see a conflict? I have no idea whether he sees a conflict or not. When the Bible clearly states its position with homosexuality and other teachings in the Bible that Trump actively promotes, what does Trump actively promote counter to the Bible's view on homosexuality? Okay, so I'll dig in on that. Trump claims that he supports gay marriage, for example. Well, Trump's claimed all kinds of things going both ways. But his actions have actively worked against LGBTQ rights. But can I ask him if Trump is a good man just for his reaction face? Actually, yeah. That's actually probably one of my favorite things that's come out, because that's a big issue. How do you choose the topic? How do you pick the structure of the debate? So, Maddie, this isn't going to be a debate, and it's not structured. This is, I'm going to walk out on stage and say hello to everybody, introduce Dinesh, and we're going to sit down and talk for a while, and then we're going to take questions. It's just the general topic and theme was decided on by the promoters and the people involved as God, Trump, and the future of America. Who knows what we're actually going to talk about? It's my job to try to make sure that we at least spend a little time on God, a little time on Trump, and a little time on the future of America. And so part of my thoughts for that are to ask specific questions in each of those categories and try to get to a point where we're talking about what's best, what would be better for the future, a secular humanist perspective or his, neocon particular version of Christianity. Do you have any plan for an opening salvo? No, I don't plan salvos. I'm not going there to attack the man. I'm going there to have a conversation with him because I want to find out how we started off in similar positions and are now in different positions. Is there anything that we still agree on, any common ground? And I want to allow him to speak specifically so that I can expose the problems with what he has to say as best I can. But this is not a salvo thing, and there's not going to be a barrage of, you did this or you said this. Maybe I'll come up and say, in 1997, you said this thing. Do you still stand by that, as a way of prompting part of the discussion? Ask Dinesh, what of all the contradictions in the Bible and how does he justify them? Oh, well, I can already predict the answer to that. There aren't any contradictions in the Bible. But the other thing is just to say that there's scribal errors. Yeah. I think the primary thing you should address with D'Souza is if he actually cares about what is true or not. You talk a lot about on AXP, and I think it fits quite well with the political psycho of Trump. Yeah. And also, I've jotted that down for does he care about truth? But what would change his mind on God? Because that foundation, I believe, no matter how unusual or atypical he has built his up, that foundation, you know, he's a theist of some stripe and I'm an atheist. And so if you begin there and build upwards, you get to the different positions. The title, A Showdown Over God, etc. My question I'd love to ask Dinesh is, do you think you can accurately articulate Matt's position on God to Matt's satisfaction? That would work better if there was like a moderator, Darius, but I can do it in the tell me what you think my position is. But while that would be cool to expose that he doesn't understand what my position is, I'd much rather have a conversation where he tells me what his position is, I tell him what my position is, and we actually discuss this rather than trying to... He could walk in not having a clue who I am or what I think, and it wouldn't make any difference. So the fact that he's wrong about what I think at the beginning is unsurprising. Maybe putting a question like that near the end. Now that you've had a conversation with me, do you think you could actually articulate what my position is? Sunnyside said, I'm particularly curious to know explicitly under what conditions on whatever particular topics that is discussed would he be willing to change his mind? Yeah. Asked Dinesh why evangelicals support Trump when he's committed adultery and other commandments. That's, yeah. That goes into, you know, is Trump a good man? I'm going to lump it all under that same category because there's nothing that would suggest that merely because someone has committed adultery that they are not someone who should be supported. Love the sinner, hate the sin. Trump's sins are between him and God. My thing is that, you know, if somebody commits adultery and actually genuinely feels guilt about it and tries to make amends and make their lives better, you know, I'm not going to hold it against him. It's just that when you keep doing it and you're talking about grabbing women by the pussy or, you know, how you could probably shoot somebody on the street and get away with it and mocking people and, you know, it's just, there's nothing about him that is a good person in any way that I can identify. With respect to current events, the coronavirus and Pence now in charge of that, would love to know if he thinks prayer will help. All right. I've had to add something on there because the question, how do you think prayer would help with the coronavirus? The more important question is the follow-up, which is how can you tell whether or not prayer has done anything? We don't have a way to rewind the universe. So they can sit around all day long saying prayer is helping with the coronavirus. It's helping. It would have been so much worse if people hadn't prayed. And that's, you just have no way of demonstrating that. That's just a bald ass assertion. I think he's going to disagree with you without accurately representing your position. Yeah, and in that case, I'll call him out on that when when we can. It's Dinesh. It's going to be largely gish gobs, strawmans, and dodging, but should be interesting. Yeah, Zoe, this chat specifically set up for this Q&A. I advertised it. So we're having people in to talk about the upcoming debate this Sunday. You could ask if he believes that the end of the world would be a good thing. Okay. But I would suspect that his answer would be yes. I mean, that's the right answer, given if you think that God's plan is to usher in the end of days and then rapture all the believers to the wonderful place. Well, of course, the end of days is a good thing. I mean, I used to believe that. Are we doing your research for you? No, I'm doing my own research. I'm just wanting to make sure that if somebody knows something or has a particular question that they want asked, that they have an opportunity to do that. And also, for some of these, the question asked isn't one I would actually ask, but it may spawn a different question. So, and I don't know what's going to happen during Q&A, but I remember Dinesh trying to associate the current Democrat Party with the Democrat Party that defended slavery back during the Civil War, in addition to other things. Any opinion on whether he may do something like that with you? I don't know, because that's not all that controversial. The fact that the Democratic Party is on many issues where the Republican Party used to be, and vice versa, that the parties have at some point flopped, is just true. I mean, that's just the way it is. And rather than go back and say, my identification with Democrats, to whatever extent I identify with them, has to do with their current positions, not the positions that they had, 150 years ago. That's about where you're going to label something. I'm not tied. I'm tied to positions, not parties. And I think he is too. Like if the Republican Party got too far out of whack, this is why they start doing the Tea Party and other stuff. Can you ask him what would be your ideal America and how do we get there from where we are? Yes, I can. I'm even going to put a star next to a couple of these so that I can expand on them. Okay. Has Trump done any actions against LGBT? Yes. Are you asking me, or was that for the thing? The virus didn't come from God. The virus is the result of a sinful, fallen world. I'm just putting on my Christian hat for some of these. Ask Dinesh if he truly feels as a follower of Christ that Trump represents the Christian way of life and would be the role model for young Christians to follow. Yeah, that's in there under, is Trump a good man? Yeah, don't really ban anybody until then. Would he lie for Trump or take a fall? That's the kind of question that I could never ask because, okay, Sandariel, would you lie for somebody you like? If you say yes, I mean, that's interesting. But if you say no, how do I know you're telling the truth? And I don't know that it's really gets to the core of this. I have a hard time thinking of questions I'd actually want to hear D'Souza answer, given that his answers are almost always dishonest. I understand the sentiment. It's something worth considering. Speaking to the future of America aspect, what role does he see religion playing in a world that includes extraterrestrials? Yeah, we're not going there. We have, like, he's a climate change denier. We have real issues to face. I don't want to go bringing extraterrestrials into the mix until there's a reason to think that we have anything to worry about with respect to extraterrestrials. What's a good way to pin someone down to questions for giving a non-answer? In a public thing like this, because we're under time pressure and there are other questions and there are people waiting, generally, if you give a couple shots at it and they're not answering the question, then you hang a lantern on it. You just say, hey, you still haven't answered the question at all. Don't even remotely think that you have, but we have to move on to other questions. I asked this earlier and sorry if you've already answered it. How to address the glaring hypocrisy of evangelicals about Trump being the least Christian president ever? Well, the problem, Buckets, is that is he the least Christian president ever? How would you, I don't even know how you would categorize that. And so it's kind of covered under, is Trump a good man? Is he a good Christian role model? Because that gets to Dinesh's view. Because Dinesh's view might think that Trump's the most Christian president ever, or that it doesn't matter. That, you get back to that, I think it's a 2 Timothy passage about all leaders are appointed by God. I should probably get the verse right before I get there, since it seems like it might be referenced. But there's a lot of things where Trump is I would argue, the least intelligent, the least respectful, the least diplomatic, the least knowledgeable, the least honest, the least compassionate, least Christian, isn't particularly interested. I understand that you're asking about the hypocrisy of evangelicals. I'm looking at this from the standpoint of somebody who sat down with their mother at Christmas and basically said, if I said the things that Trump said, you would disown me, and yet you think he's God's appointed. And their answer is that if he's God's appointed, it doesn't matter what he's done. It doesn't matter whether or not he's a good Christian. He's the one God picked. And God can work through terrible people. There is a rationalization for all of these things. Doesn't mean I won't ask the question. I'm not suggesting it's a bad question. I just think it falls underneath the is he a good Christian role model? I think you have good intentions. I believe you want the best for our nation's children, but I disagree with your conclusions. Can you say the same about me? I love that question, except that I don't think I could say it. Because while I'm convinced that he thinks he has good intentions, I don't think his intentions are good. I don't think he wants that what he thinks is best for the nation is not what I think is best for the nation. And this kind of gets to the end of days thing, where if you think the best thing is to usher in the apocalypse, you're not going to get me to agree there. But there is a way to rephrase that question. Let me jot it in here so that I can rephrase this in a way to get to the heart of what you're asking, because I think at its core, Darius, I think that's great. Yeah, trying to find out if we have some common goal, apart from disagreeing about what might be best, with respect to financial well-being, social well-being, health, societal health and individual health and stuff like that. Getting to that point of agreement is actually probably a key thing to get to the heart of what Darius was asking. Asking, the universe was created primarily to send humans to hell, because that's apparently all it does. Yeah, digging in on what God wants and what God thinks. Yep, got that. That's Christian hat, a specific red baseball hat. Oh, no, I wouldn't wear that one, but I had some that were similar. Let me scroll through chat, see if I can get caught up here. Do you think we'll ever have an atheist president? I think we probably already have. They just didn't necessarily identify that way. I think the data show that we are inevitably becoming more and more secular, and that religious identity is dropping off. And whether or not how soon we have a president that just says, yep, I'm an atheist, and just moves on to the business of doing the job as president, I couldn't tell you. I would say that if Bernie may or may not qualify, although I'm not quite sure whether or not that's actually going to happen. Hey, and so right in the middle of my stream on Dinesh D'Souza and questions, we have a wild Phil Ferguson who comes in. Yeah, we're going through a list of questions from people, both about this and things that they'd like asked, and then I'm going to post it to YouTube. So you'll be on YouTube, Phil.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for the Coke Zero.
You bet.
Can a person who's never worked a job be a good president of the country? I kind of think that if you think that he's a president, if you think he's a good president, then that kind of answers itself. But I would say yes. I mean, my answer is yes. Would they be the best candidate? Probably not. I think I would prefer somebody with a lot of life experience, but someone who is essentially born incredibly wealthy, who, and this is going to be very, very rare, spent their life educating and volunteering so that they've never actually worked a job, I think could be a fine president under the right. It's about the ideologies and the principles of the person. And that's probably why we're in such disagreement about Trump, is that I don't find him particularly principled, and whatever principles he have, I don't find them great. I'm falling behind on chat. So my current favorite question is, how did someone first discover X supernatural thing? might be especially exciting to compare to climate change. That's interesting in a slightly skewed way. In that, how can you possibly accept weak evidence and conclude that supernatural things are real when you don't even accept good evidence from climate scientists? That's the way to go there. Both Dinesh and Trump have publicly done birtherism of Obama several times during his office. How does he justify his or Trump's action? Yeah. I don't want to spend too much time on the past and birtherism stuff, but, you know, do you now accept finding positions that things you might have said in the past that you regret or that you've changed your mind on? There you go. That ties into it. Question about Dinesh's intentions is important to me because a lot of atheists have Christian families. Just because we disagree doesn't mean we have to hate each other or assume malintent. That really matters to me because apologists will try to frame us as malintents. Well, my goal for this and all of these is to always sit there and show, let the other person go more negative. Let the other person look more bigoted and more ridiculous, because I will not ever support like legislation to remove people's religion or their right to practice their religion, with the exception of when it overlaps with other people's rights. No, Mikey, Kennedy, and Obama were not atheists. I know Dawkins loves to say that he's convinced that Obama was an atheist. Obama's mother was an atheist, and Obama identifies as a Christian and attended church even when he wasn't doing political stuff. And as much as it might be, you know, I might like to claim him as an atheist, I don't get to. I don't get to just say, no, when he tells you he's a Christian, he's lying, because that's what politicians have to do. Bernie has been cagier about it and may or may not qualify, although he definitely does not like or use the label. Kennedy was a Catholic, the first Catholic elected office. Let's not pretend that we can read people's minds and suss out what they really believed. Dillahunty 2030, no thank you. Does he think the government should be run like a business? If so, who are the shareholders and who release the profits? I'll think about that one. One of the things is that there's a disparity between me and Dinesh, and I will identify this now and on stage. And that is, my primary focus is on religion, religious claims, skepticism, philosophy, humanism, you know, morality, things like that. And he has primarily been in the public policy, political aspect of this and just doing it from a neoconservative, right-wing Christian perspective. That means that in some of the areas of this discussion, I'm not going to be able to go with facts or talk about a particular ideology or say or explain, you know, if we got to something like Medicare for all, where does the money come from? Because I don't dig in on the financial stuff. I'm just looking at what sort of things would fundamentally improve the world. That doesn't mean that I'm not at all concerned about how to pay for it. It's just that I think we're paying for things that perhaps we shouldn't, or we could shuffle things around. Who knows? That's a great question, Dr. Zaplin. It's a good way as a matter of fact, that might steer. So Dr. Zaplin said, could you ask him if he views the separation of church and state as a good thing? If the answer is positive, then shouldn't we be taking down church tax exemptions, for example, to hold favoring any religion at all? I had primarily been looking at this as here's a particular stripe of Christian and here's a secular humanist, and let's talk about God, Trump, and the future of America. And I was going to tie the threads together along that about opposing worldviews. But church-state separation is such a critical aspect of that I'm glad you mentioned it. I know it would have come up, but to have it, you know, kind of foremost in my mind is a good thing. So, yeah. By the way, I'm going to do this again. There's the links to tickets and the links to the stream. And that includes the title of the debate or discussion, I guess. It's kind of a debate, whatever. What YouTube channels do you follow or recommend? Can be fun, can be atheist or for fun. I really don't know, and that's not the subject of this one. We're kind of just doing like a 1 hour hangout that I post to YouTube specifically about the D'Souza debate. Fushino Panic says you're losing weight like 80 pounds over the last year and a half. Thanks for noticing. Last question from me, Matt, and only listening. Where will this discussion be available? Your Patreon, YouTube channel, or another site, and potentially when? It's happening in 4 days, March 1st, in New York City. And you can either attend live or you can check in on the live stream afterwards. And then after that, and the live stream and everything else, it will be posted on my YouTube and Patreon thing. Well, Flat Earth, so somebody earlier asked me if I had planned some sort of thing to start off with, and not entirely, but I want to see if we can't get to some point of agreement. And I don't think he's a flat earther, but he's definitely a climate change denier. And so I might rattle off a couple of those and say, can we at least start by agreeing that the earth is not flat? That I think could potentially get a laugh and start us off on the right foot, because there's going to be some incredibly contentious thing coming up. How does Dinesh reconcile conservatism's usual screw the poor stance with the teachings of Jesus? I might find another way to phrase that, but there is an answer, by the way. Not that I want to do both sides of the debate today, but Slaz, in response to your question, there is a verse that specifically says if they don't work, they don't eat. Now, there's a lot of context surrounding all that. And one of the things is that, you can pretty much pick passages out of the Bible and interpret them however you want to support whatever you want. But as far as, Jesus is specifically saying, sell all your belongings, give your money to the poor. And then Paul's coming along essentially saying if they don't work, they don't eat. And then they just prioritize one verse over the other, that, but somewhere in there is this notion of kind of social welfare that is part of Jesus's teachings. The bigger problem is that this life doesn't matter. This life is like dirty rags. This is a place to wipe your feet before you get onto the real life. And all leaders are appointed by God. You can find a verse for anything. Do you believe it morally right to honestly search for truth about reality? We've got something down there about does he actually care about truth, but I don't know that whether maybe it's a moral imperative, maybe it's not. Darius said, you mentioned that you don't support legislation against religious rights. I was raised in a homeschool creationist home and went to Christian college. I believe there should be legislation where parents can't homeschool the way that I was. Society's leaving thousands of children in the dust on religious grounds. There need to be more strict regulations about religious homeschool curriculum. Oh, I agree there, but that's not violating religious freedoms. That's I'm opposed to homeschooling unless there are pretty stringent requirements that they have to meet certain educational goals and directives. They have to be educated at a in concordance with a particular curriculum. Not that they have to necessarily know A, B, and C, and D, but the notion that you could just essentially pull your kids out of school, say you're homeschooling them, and there be no oversight or very little oversight is bizarre. Unfortunately, even within secular humanism, as a principle of individual freedom and liberty, parents, as the custodians of their kids, not the owners of their kids, have both rights with regard to what they teach their kids and responsibilities with regard to what they teach their kids. And so you could, as a sick experiment, teach your kid that left is right and right is left, and then just the rest of society would have to trust that we can undo that education as they get out in the world. But parents are supposed to be preparing them for the world, and as a society, we have a duty to make sure that we're giving parents guidance and guidelines to do that as well. If Jesus healed the sick, why do most Republicans and some Democrats want people to pay for medical health insurance? Because that money puts people to work, I think, is probably the biggest answer. But yeah, point well taken, Rosemary. You look marvelous, talking. Could I ask about Jesus' instructions to give everything to the poor, his anti-socialist views? Yep. What is that shirt? This is a shirt that I wear sometimes at magic shows. That is the tarot card for the devil, or a tarot card for the devil. This is not from the Rider tarot deck. It's from some other tarot deck, but yeah. Does he believe it's beyond God's power to give humans power over the Earth's climate? I don't know where we would get to from that. Because those things of, is it beyond God's power? Generally are, no, it's not beyond God's power, but why doesn't he do it? I don't know. God has his reasons, and he's smarter and wiser than us. And so there are some questions that just are great questions, and they're potential gotchas in the discussion, which may come up fluidly, but some of them I don't think are going to get us any further along. There's so much we disagree on. Do you ever think we'll ever hit the AI singularity? No idea. No, not the purpose of tonight's discussion. What's his stance on abortion versus death penalty? Well, we know what his stance on abortion is. And he's tweeted some absolutely despicable things, like when Planned Parenthood announced their new director and were touting her medical credentials. He replied with a tweet that said something effective, I'm sure the Nazis were proudly touting Joseph Mengele's medical credentials as well, or something along that line. But I'm sure his position on abortion, the death penalty, mirror the overwhelming majority of fundamentalists. Have I got a nice outfit for the event? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Breaking out the old salt and pepper. That's not a salt and pepper. That's a paisley thing that's primarily for the magic shows. I may have a new jacket for this Sunday. I don't know yet. This is mostly a Q&A for the upcoming discussion with Dinesh D'Souza. Yeah, sorry. I stream all the time on Twitch, so any of you can come back at any time and ask whatever the heck you want. But tonight, just as a reminder, I've done this a couple times, but we'll do it real quick, and then I'll catch back up on chat. This Sunday, March 1st, I'm having a sit-down discussion with Dinesh D'Souza in New York City. If you do Bang debate info, you can find where to buy tickets through Ticketmaster for the event in New York, and also how to order the live stream, which I think is like $10 for that live stream. And then later on in the month, or what we'll be posting as well. I wanted to answer some questions specifically about that event and get your questions, the types of things that you might want to ask Dinesh. Some of them I'm heading off at the curve, but totally with you on homeschooling. Mind you, public schools need to not suck as well. Absolutely. And there are problems with regard to private schools and what they can get away with too. So maybe ask if there's a non-biblical basis establishing the historical existence of Jesus. I don't think we're going to get into historicity at this one, Sunnyside. There's enough stuff without digging in on potential mythicist stuff. And since I'm not a mythicist, I'm not the right person to sit there, and I have no problem with the notion that that there's an actual historical figure at the center of this. It's just we don't seem to know anything about that person with any accuracy. Do you think Dinesh will attack the idea of political correctness in SJW stuff? I would be very surprised if he didn't. And I'm hopefully ready to address that, because while I don't know where he thinks I am, because while I'm pretty far left on a lot of things, I don't think SJW should be a pejorative, but I'm also not a fan of political correctness. What I'm a fan of is, empathy and equality. There are things about some of the political correctness stuff that bug me too. Ask him what he means by socialism the first time he used that word. Yes, sir. I will do my best. It's going to be good to try to get definitions of words as they come into the discussion to see if where we are. I mean, we've already been at this for 45 minutes here, and I imagine Dinesh and I will probably just talk for an hour and a half or so, maybe longer. And you've seen how deep we've been able to get to stuff in 45 minutes. And so I'm going to try to keep it to like 20, 30 minutes on God, 20, 30 minutes on Trump or something along that lines, and then the rest on the future of America. Dr. Zaplin said, last question, thanks for talking with us. Asking if possible, wouldn't the recent tragedy with Hughes be an indicator that we need to be teaching people about skepticism and scientific reasoning as much as possible instead of thinking about teaching creationism and encouraging religion-related thinking? What recent tragedy with Hughes? Am I just not catching the name? Did I miss something? If you can add a little something to that, great. If Dinesh attacks homosexuality, asking about the sanctity of marriage and the abomination that is shellfish. Yeah. But I think there's more to it. Regarding God's power to give humans power of the climate change. It's not about why God doesn't do it. The question is about how he knows God hasn't already done it. Oh, the people who think that this is something they can't solve. I don't even think he thinks the problem is real, let alone whether we can do that. Do I wash that shirt in cold water? Or does the devil insist on hot? Well played. Do you plan on ever doing a talk with Jump? Yeah. And he's probably going to end up on Atheist Experience at some point. Tom did a debate in the studio right before my previous debate, or 2 debates ago. Personally, I think this is a great opportunity as an attempt to bridge a divide. Bridge building, even if the course ends up fruitless, is incredibly important. I don't know how much we're going to bridge, but that's always part of the goal. Does he think it's right to support a man so opposite of what he considers Christian? That we're going to find out, because I don't know what he considers Christian or Christian enough. Dinesh, on the death penalty, there's a legitimate argument over whether the death penalty effectively deters violent crime, although my personal observation is that not one of the criminals who have been executed over the years has ever killed again. Wow. Is that a legit quote? Because I have very particular views on the death penalty. In principle, I'm not opposed to it. In practice, I am completely opposed to it. But to suggest that not one of the criminals who've been executed over the years has ever killed again kind of waves this big flag of how many of them had actually killed before. How many innocent individuals did you actually kill? The fact that they didn't kill again, okay, let's kill everybody and then nobody will ever kill again. That's how stupid that is. Yeah. You're the best, man. Thanks for helping me be more skeptic. Oh, thank you so much. I think you might be talking about the flat earther got himself killed. Oh, the Hughes, the dude with the rocket. Yeah, I don't know what that guy's religious views were or why they were relevant, but teaching skepticism and critical thinking would be great. Yeah, I probably won't get into the flat earther who got himself killed, but thanks for the clarification. Yes, I did hear about the story. It's just, I just shrugged my shoulders and moved on. Yeah, if he's against socialism, ask him about fire department, public roads, liberty, libraries. Yeah, that kind of stuff. It's one of the reasons why I'm for taxing churches in the same exact way that any other organization gets taxed. If you want a tax exempt status, you have to show that you're doing something in the public good, because the fire department doesn't arrive at a burning church any slower. In fact, it might arrive faster than it does for the people who are actually paying taxes. Asking me thinks a good president compared to previous ones. That's interesting, and he may. But yeah, I'm one of the things I'm going to get to is what policies were actually implemented by Trump or undone by Trump in some cases, and why he thinks that's potentially better. That's pretty much the key of these types of discussions. What Dargendorf said, in my opinion, break down the red herrings and straw mans and generating mutual understanding. Yeah, like I said, I still have no idea. Thanks, Major Extra. I still have no idea whether or not we're going to come to any significant agreement about anything. I would be very surprised if we did. But if we can at least find some common ground, like even if we both said we want what's best for America, but we can't agree on what's best, that would be a good way to kind of move the conversation towards, okay, how could we go about figuring out what's best? Because if your answer to what is best for America is whatever you think your God wants. And my answer is whatever is demonstrably producing a stronger, better, healthier society with regard to individual freedoms and liberties and societal health, individual health. If those are the factors that I'm considering, and you're only considering what you think your God wants, well, now we have an issue where the only people you can possibly win with are the people who absolutely agree with you about what you think your God wants. So getting to that is probably a big deal. I think perhaps the two issues that divide us most politically and religiously are guns and abortion. I don't think the guns divide us, but abortion is definitely, I mean, I know plenty of people, including relatives of mine, who are single issue voters. And if there's two people and one of them's, in favor of keeping abortion legal and the other one's in favor of making it illegal, they're going to vote for the one that wants to make it illegal. I don't think guns are nearly as big a deal as a lot of people make it out to be. And I wish our gun laws were probably closer to Australia's is my general view, because there are issues, but I'm not like a lot of my left-wing friends. I'm not running around terrified of guns. I grew up in the country. I have had guns. I have one antique rifle now that hasn't been fired since I was 15 and probably won't be ever again, because it's an antique and, nice. But I don't have any problem with the Second Amendment as I think it should be. And I don't run around fearful of people with guns. And I live in Texas, and I go like the UK, and people are like, oh, is everybody walking around Texas with a gun? No. I almost never see a gun. Now, granted, I live in Austin, and everybody's, too high and listening to too much music to carry a gun or worry about it. But, all right, chat scrolled a little quickly. I'm going to try and catch up. Is this final deciding factor based on empiricism, or is it rather divine command theory? Yeah. And I think that's what I was just talking about, Darius, so we're there. Tax churches in general sense are part of the influencing the law through their backing of Trump, except that they're not supposed to be. And so that's a good foundation to say, look, they're going to violate these rules. They keep violating these rules. Do we want to waste our time and money in lawsuits and criminal prosecutions to remove, Church X's non-exempt status because they couldn't stop from endorsing candidates? Or do we just want to recognize, okay, let's just tax them and let them do it? Because all it does is provide lip service. I mean, for example, I'm the president of the Atheist Community of Austin. It's a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and that organization is not allowed to endorse candidates. We can, however, discuss issues. And so we could poll candidates and say what their position on the issues are, and we could say what our position on the issues are, and then you could just do the math and see essentially who you suspect the ACA might be endorsing. But the ACA doesn't endorse anybody. And by the way, this conversation is me as an individual, not speaking on behalf of the ACA at all. I can endorse anybody that I want to. I don't, in part because I'm overly concerned about any perceived overlap between my role as president of the ACA and my, position as a, just general public figure that people can ask questions of. Now, on a personal level, obviously, I'm not pro-Trump, but I'm not endorsing anybody. Let's see. His most irritating joke is with respect to cosmology. Scientists climbed the mountain and found a bunch of theologians at the top. He's going to equate the universe didn't always exist being predicted by the Bible with the microwave background is 2.7 Kelvin. Thank you, literally the only sane. Find it better ironic the U.S. is founded in part because of Enlightenment philosophy, and the far right is attempting to rewrite history to fit their narrative. Yeah. Is he willing to distinguish for the sake of conversation something else between things God wants and things he thinks God wants? Yeah, and I added on there, can you be wrong and how could we tell? Be careful when discussing morality. Religious people are usually highly incoherent on this. I find it curious that I'm being warned to be careful when discussing morality with a religious person, as there's probably no topic I've spent more time talking about with religious people. But don't worry, I'll be careful. I mean, like, I don't proclaim expertise in anything. If I have any particular skills, it's in taking difficult concepts and making them approachable to almost anybody. And perhaps, at least according to my friend Seth Andrews, being somewhat of a natural storyteller, being able to construct a narrative to get to A to B, on the fly. But if I had a third one, I'd argue that morality might be the area where I am best grounded. But Dinesh's wife, Denise O.D. Joseph II, is quoted, she believed that women's suffrage is not a good idea. Does he agree with her perspective? Okay, I don't want to put his wife on trial or his ex-wife on trial or whoever. But I will think about that and consider it. Because sexism and equality are big issues. And I don't want to skip LGBTQIA plus rights, etc. Most of the arguments I know against the position I learned from watching you, blah, blah, blah. Thank you. Most on the left doesn't have an issue with the Second Amendment. The right tends to inflate the issue. Yeah, I don't even know that many. Like, I have a friend who manufactured custom receivers on his metal CNC machine for rifles. Actually, electing Trump hurt his business and killed it off because, as long as the NRA can keep saying, oh, they're coming for your guns, they're coming for your guns, people wanted to get more custom things. And it probably hurt and killed off his business. But I don't know too many people who are sane who really think anybody's coming for their guns. It reminds me, the NRA's fear-mongering reminds me of some minimal Christian sects fear-mongering, like slightly more pronounced than what Westboro gets involved with, but doesn't rise to the level of mega churches or anything else, which is still a minority. When you say the Pledge of Allegiance, do you say under God? I don't, for lots of reasons. My favorite, people used to do the One Nation Undereducated, but a friend of mine told me that there was a kid who said One Nation Under Canada, which I think that's funny too. I just don't say anything there. We got just a couple minutes left before I wrap this up, but I want to try and catch up on chat. 20 Dragon says, I don't say the pledge at all anymore. I generally don't. I do have issues with pledges of allegiance or whatever else because, as somebody who served in the military for 8 years, I took an oath to the Constitution. I am no longer bound by that, but I am still consider myself loyal to constitutional principles and in the way that they should be, which includes separation of religion and government, individual freedoms, ensuring that there's not this overinflation of church-state entanglement. And it includes, I love when people do you shouldn't burn a flag. Well, bite me. Somebody told me I couldn't draw Muhammad, so I drew Muhammad. Until they said I couldn't, I had no interest in drawing Muhammad, but now I've done it. And if somebody says don't burn a flag, I have no interest in burning a flag. But I'll burn a dozen flags and just sit there and say, you know what? I was a veteran for 8+ years. This is the sort of freedom that we are actually designated to protect. This is a protected thing. What is the fear of what's going to happen if people can burn the flag? I mean, some people never, like when McCarthy era crap started, some people got stuck there, and I'm waiting for them to die off because then we can keep making progress. Distinguish between what God wants, or what you think God wants. Yep. Sure is convenient. God seems to like all the things that believers like. It sure is. Ask Dinesh, how did the kangaroos get back to Australia after the flood? If we get anywhere near the flood, I'm not quite sure what his view was on the flood. There's so much to address that I don't know that we'll get to the flood, but maybe it'll come up along with the God stuff. So much mud to sling at him for awful dumb things he said and written, but it's probably not optimal to stoop that level. I don't plan to do that at all. I don't plan to march in with a bunch of Dinesh quotes and say, please defend yourself, please defend yourself, please defend yourself. I think that comes off as incredibly problematic. I'd rather have a more genuine discussion and let him just expose himself further and get new quotes out there for people to compile them, put them up on websites. I understand, Matt, and I apologize. It appears that I made that perspective about his spouse partner. No. I understand what you were getting at. It's worthwhile to address. When we start talking about the morality of Trump cheating on his spouse and everything else, if he starts preaching too much, to the point where he thinks he's trying to score some cheap points, I'm not necessarily above saying, well, at least one of the two of us on stage has never cheated on his spouse or any partner. He'd love to know what he thinks about religious trauma and what he thinks should be done about it. I don't think we're going to quite go there. The differences are too core to get to even trying to discuss something like religious trauma syndrome. There are things that I may point out, like I work alongside and am supportive of the Recovering from Religion organization in dealing with people who are suffering from trauma that was induced by religion. Also, I'm a fan and very infrequent counselor for the Clergy Project. Essentially, there's one or two people in the Clergy Project, and you're offered a chance to speak to somebody, and they chose to speak to me. But that's for former clergy. Ask him if he thinks Ken Hoven's a fucking asshole too. I don't think I'll ask that, but I appreciate it, Mikey. Personally, I asked Dinesh and other apologists if they think America is seceding from England and thus founding our nation to be an immoral, rebellious act. Yeah, I don't think we're going to go that far back in time. I'm going to wrap this up. Please let me catch up on chat, and I'll put a stop to this and get this uploaded to YouTube. But expecting different answers. Thank you, Matt, for sharing. Have a great discussion with Dash. I really do hope to. I hope that it comes off pretty well. I'm not going to go for the mudslinging stuff. Yeah, flag burning may be disrespectful, but it's about whether or not you feel the respect is earned. If you think the principles of your country have been sacrificed for something else, then that's exactly the sort of protest that I think is fine. Almost done. I'm gonna draw a line in the sand here. There we go. There's a line in the sand. Thanks everybody for coming on and helping out and asking questions. I've got a bunch of them here. I've got some of them starred as we work towards the event this weekend. There's the debate info one last time. Some of your questions may get asked. Some of them, most of them probably won't. This is the nature of a discussion that isn't structured. This isn't a debate. It's not like we're each going to have opening statements and focus on a topic. If it were, we would narrow the topic to, is there good reason to believe in a God, or should America be one nation under God, which is probably one of my favorite debates that I've done. That was with Abdu Murray probably quite a few years ago, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. In this, it's God, Trump, and the future of America. And so rather than trying to necessarily dig deep on all those topics, in my head, I view it as I'm showing up as a secular humanist, atheist, church-state separationist, relatively liberal progressive, to have a conversation with a neoconservative, right-wing, Christian, climate change denying, blah, blah, blah. And can we find any point of agreement? Can we figure out exactly where we disagree? And while I don't think either of us are going to dramatically change the other's mind on anything, having that discussion so that people can see and watch people think and respond to various subjects within that broader realm, I think that's actually productive. And so maybe instead of showing up with a bunch of old Matt quotes or a bunch of old Dinesh quotes, maybe we'll get new Matt quotes and new Dinesh quotes that other people can make use of. But I appreciate everybody's time, and I'm going to turn off the recording part now, but I'll keep the stream going for a little bit.